Since I actually decided to glance at chat and be a half-decent streamer for once. Hello, everyone, and welcome to game number 4 of our January FFA casual tournament. This time we're going to be featuring Vampyrus, Minimat, Cheesecake, NL, and Scott Call. So these are 4 players we have not seen at all yet, and I don't know if any of them has actually picked up a victory at this point. And of course, we're once again joined by Blues for commentary.
Hello. So, yeah, this map, we were talking about 4 power robots, and for good reason. Double power price to start, power colony, and all the silicons in this north edge.
Yeah. On top of that, iron's a bit pricey, and steel is not on the cheap side. Because one of the things I like to sneak in, this is something I learned from Qubit, and I think not many other people have picked it up, is managing that expansive geothermal power play when silicon is particularly awful. And maybe it would actually be possible this time with iron being expensive and steel being moderate. But it'll be interesting to see what our players actually elect to do here.
Downside to the power robot spot in particular, of course, that's just so far away from anything that's not silicon.
Cliffs. Yeah, I mean, you've got silicon, you have a low aluminum, and then you have hills and cliffs for eternity until you actually get to a resource.
Water's not too terrible, but if you ever want to make steel, you're just not.
Ooh, Minimat managed to get upgraded. I was nervous for him for a moment. Not too surprised he got to the upgrade, I guess, but it's always dangerous to put down that single steel mill because it's almost always worthless. And especially in a situation where you've gone double iron at HQ1, because iron is so expensive, it's really dangerous to put down a single steel mill also at HQ1. But he got there. It's all good.
I guess the idea was that there's no really good aluminum to take, but with the double iron, something like that might have made more sense.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Minimat's actually getting into a geotherm right away. This is one of the few situations where I can accept. Where is this going? Oh, ugh. That's one thing I can't accept. So Minimat has taken 2 geotherm locations, and he's building one of them right now, but it's the very, very, very far away one. And this has been going on since I started rambling, and it's not even there yet.
Especially with the Vampyrus going into these wind turbines, you need to get the power up a bit faster than that. It's going to take too long to pay off.
Absolutely. I mean, the 2 geotherms are going to finish at about the same time. One of them, they're just a couple seconds off of each other at this point, which is really atrocious considering how long ago you started that first one. If you're going to go double geotherm, which I'm not entirely against with power being so difficult, build the close one first. That way it's online and you can actually use it.
I would be concerned about the double geotherm play just because Min3 Met has no aluminum. This glass shortage is going to make life even harder for him. Unless he's going to make money on power, he's going to be stuck here for a while.
It's true, but I think he can make money on power. I mean, he's paying off 450 dead a second right now, and power is still going up in price. My big concern is that he is open to a mutiny.
He did do a good job of freezing out Vampyrus' power, of really keeping that money to himself. Of course, like you were saying, that means that his second geo still is undefended.
Yes, and so what that's created, I'm more okay with this because there aren't spies this game, quite frankly. So suddenly, Vampyrus is left in a position of, you want to get aggressive because you're the scavenger, there are 2 geotherms open, you're pretty sure they probably aren't both defended. In this case, you're not sure because there have been 2 Goon Squads purchased, but you're pretty sure. And so which one do you attack? Which one do you choose? What do you think's defended and what doesn't? So much harder to come to that conclusion when there aren't spies available to just go ahead and check. That's why I'm okay with Minimat choosing to get aggressive here. There you go, making money on power. On top of that, he already has at least the glass secured. I'm concerned about not having taken aluminum. I'm also concerned about the fact that Cheesecake took a farther away aluminum than necessary. It has better adjacency, but you're never going to actually use that, so it's not really important.
Right, and that's really just pretty much completely canceling out this one solar panel.
Yeah, because it does cost so much power. I mean, that's great news for Minimat, quite frankly. That's fantastic for him. The fact that Cheesecake NL got into power, not happy about. The fact that he is shipping so much, so many trucks right now, so many blimps, whatever on earth you want to call them, that's going to keep that power price nice and high.
Well, Minimat going for silicon and glass on HQ3. Taking this silicon just all the way on the edge of the map, maybe wonder if trying for a core sample would work out better in this case.
No, I agree. I think that's a really big mistake because there is some sand really close to him. And core sampling that, I think, definitely would have been worth the cooldown and the quick little cash investment.
Oh, he's going to a second silicon tile too, so especially. Just hard to see this working out.
Is forcing teleportation at this point. Let's be honest. I mean, even as an expansive, you can't ship that far.
Right, and all this extra fuel that's going to interfere with the power money.
Exactly. I mean, this is actually just straight costing him money, having to ship so far. I mean, he's making cash from the tile, don't get me wrong, but it's nowhere near as profitable as it looks at the moment. Let's see. Would also like to, frankly, see a swap potentially from these steel mills. Another option that Minimat had here was to potentially try and pick up water instead, fight over that before it all got taken away from him as it did. I mean, I'm really pretty concerned for him. A use of core samples, though, could have fixed all of this, because I believe he's got some territory nearby that should have water under it if you core sample it out. Likely to have water under it. And he's got the territory nearby for silicon.
And also for aluminum, even making one of these lows into something much more usable.
Absolutely. Just a little concerned. I mean, Minimat is still in an okay spot, but you can see he's actually acquiring debt now. And so he's no longer making money off of these geotherms, so he's just going to have to scrape the cash together from elsewhere. And pretty much the only thing left on the map making him that money is this ridiculously expensive, in terms of debt, silicon. And my other big concern about that is he doesn't have any water picked up, so he's not really in a position to start fighting with that fuel price. He's not in a position to maybe make the swap into teleportation and then have reactors down to suddenly start making money off of this price that he's developed. I mean, I'm concerned.
He's going to a third silicon tile.
Ugh. I don't like that at all. I mean, yeah, silicon's pricey. Maybe it'll work out because this game is just so nuts. But I don't like it at all. And I don't see anybody else producing glass. Nobody else is consuming silicon right now beyond building solar panels. And we should be just about done with that at this point.
This sort of play could work to some extent, except with him continuing to auto-sell silicon and glass, he's not really putting pressure on his opponents to try to compete in that market. So he's just kind of supplying everyone with relatively cheap materials.
Yeah. I mean, Cheesecake keeps adding solar panels, which is going to help out Minimat and really hurt Cheesecake.
Robotics HQ has been upgraded.
Because frankly, I mean, power's $4. Adding a solar panel right now is just a huge waste of cash. But Minimat should still be happy about it.
What he will not be happy about is Vampirus is going after teleportation.
Which I really like, just as a straight denial. I mean, Vampirus isn't even really shipping all that far, but if you secure teleportation, you're kind of guaranteeing that fuel's gonna be a pain for the rest of the game for everybody else, unless you keep it low.
Actually seems like she's 1 second behind Minimat, so...
Yeah, Minimat did manage to get that up next to the laboratories, so he's completing it a bit faster, of course, with the additional Patent Lab setup time.
Just about to the point where he can't be stopped from getting it. Just 3 seconds off from the goon protecting him for good.
Yep, so in 3 seconds, Minimat will be guaranteed to pick up
An
teleportation.
expansive HQ
Huge,
has been
huge thing
upgraded.
for him this game, quite frankly, because he has grabbed water as well that he's shipping. I mean, he's got
So
6 tiles, which are
An
consuming
expansive
a
HQ
minimum
has been upgraded.
of 0.38 fuel per second right now. That's a lot. I'm
I
just
do-
throwing it out there.
I do wonder about whether putting the patent lab out there is going to be worth it. Clearly, getting that teleportation is very important to him, but that's just one more dead tile eventually. Not a dead tile necessarily, but one that's not all that useful. And you already have those 3
the
silicon
black market
tiles
isn't good for
and
business.
a lot of just claims that aren't near your base.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a large number of disadvantages to taking this patent lab tile, right? The advantage is, once you've got it set up, you'll churn through patents a bit faster. But first you have to overwhelm that initial setup time that you spent in shipping it all the way out there, right? No dynamite this game, so you don't have to worry about that. But the downside later on is you can literally only use that tile for special buildings, and you can't thinking machines it. And the issue is, when you need to swap off a patent lab, because you always eventually need to swap off a patent lab, there's no other buildings adjacent there.
The
And so you
pleasure
have
dome
all
is
that extra
completed.
time,
I
once
wonder
again,
what
you
goes
have
on
to
in
spend
there.
transitioning the building. And then that building itself has no bonuses. So, I mean, you do bring up a really solid point of, is this worthwhile? Now, the other advantage I'll throw out there is, because you're researching patents faster, if you and somebody else are racing for patents consistently, and like you beat them by a little bit or they beat you by a little bit, and then you both happen to start the next patent the next time, you're guaranteed to get it every single time at that point, because yours is just going faster.
Optimization center is ready.
Definitely.
The
In this
optimization
case,
center is on
just because teleportation was so important, it doesn't seem like that's as important a factor, but something generally.
Now, I do like the thinking machines pickup, because, well, Minimat just has a ridiculous number of tiles next to
The
him.
engineers have
I
advanced on
don't
production.
like really this optimization
The
center
hacker
placement. It
array's
does
finished.
benefit from thinking
Time
machines,
to
which is
change our
great.
passwords.
But as you can see, one of the things that it does is it connects up your 2 production centers. And so,
Our methods
even though,
continue
yeah,
to
everything's not
improve.
getting hit that hard because you have thinking machines now, whatever, blah, blah, you're still just getting hit more than you needed to.
You can't let them get this.
And this could have been
Now,
positioned a
before it's
little
too
bit
late.
differently to avoid a situation where everything was getting hit at once.
Right, and if you ever feel the need to transition out of one of the optimization centers or something, it's not getting as good adjacency as it could possibly get in some other spots.
Yeah. And even if you wanted kind of the exact same thing where it was going to be next to your base, it's worth pointing out that it could have gone north of the glass, and then you still only have a 4 building
The
pod
black
instead of
market
the
is
existing
open for
7
business.
building pod. And I know these are minor things we're picking on, but this is the kind of thing that can really make the difference when a power surge comes ripping through and shuts down your production for an extra minute and a half effectively than it needed to. Okay, well, man, we talked about Minimat trying to make money. It's good Minimat made money on power early, because at this point you can really see that. What happened with teleportation? Vampirus ended up picking it up, by the way. Apparently Vampirus was about a minute ahead. So you can see Minimat's just raking in debt. It makes me wonder. I mean, was Minimat ahead? Did he end up canceling out of it? I'm not really sure what ended up happening there, but
The times were close enough that maybe just switching between the players was
A robotics
making
HQ
the
has been
numbers seem
upgraded.
different. I don't know.
that's fair enough. Anyway, but Vampires picked it up, and I think that just leaves Minimat kind of like dead in the water. Minimat had committed to a situation where he needed teleportation. And yeah, he's not completely dead, but frankly, 140,000 debt is a lot. And he's just gaining more and more and more as time goes on. And it's keeping these reactors better for Vampirus. Always a concern. I mean, if there's going to be resource consumption on the map, which there is, you really don't want it to be you if you can avoid it. There we go.
With what happened in particular, I am also a bit concerned about what Vampirus has done with her claims. Just taking 2 silicon tiles, taking 3 water tiles with that slant drilling. This is just a ton of resources.
It is true. I mean, two silicon
Black market
tiles,
is online.
to me, is
As-
almost always an error unless you're an expansive player.
Right, as a scavenger, that's just... I mean, you can see she has all of 8 production buildings.
Yeah, and on top of that, they're split because of exactly how the tiles got
New
taken.
land
I'm
is
concerned about the
available for
lack of
auction.
rotation out of the carbon at this point, because you have 1,500 carbon stored up. Go ahead and you can drop 2 off-world markets and still have 300 left. I mean, which I really think probably should happen right about yesterday. I mean, off-world markets, they aren't brilliant, but you've got 32 on the oxygen right now. And all your on-world stuff is just bad.
I guess,
Just
I guess the concern is that goons are pretty much prohibitively expensive at this point.
It's true, but all you've got are power surges and mutinies, and if somebody mutinies you, well, you're the scavenger, you're going to win that fight. Period. Or at least break even, because your mutinies are going to be coming up so much faster. And if somebody power surges you, well, that hurts. But on the other hand, if the tile's going to be doing nothing anyway, what does it hurt that they spent $20,000 to make it do nothing?
Well, that's 100 glass bought up and move into electronics, so I suppose that's probably going to be a move towards Offworlds. And there's that empty tile.
All
Going to be a bit later than Minimat and Scott Call.
Yeah. Minimat did get it done. There's a nice little hacker array position here for Vampirus that we haven't really... that just got picked up. Don't know what's actually going to drop there. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing a hacker array with a little combating everybody else's electronics, and you've got power surges ready to go already.
That could work. I'd probably just drop an optimization center there.
It's true, that is the
This
much
be a
simpler
lesson to you
course.
all. Screw with us, and we'll screw
And you
with
know
you.
electronics are going to be pretty decent with everybody trying to get into off-worlds for the time being, and there's just not that much electronics production down. Well, Minimat's trying to keep this close. We have seen a little cooking the books, which could be a pretty big deal this game to prevent the spiral for Minimat.
You can definitely see it reflected in his stock price, and that's why Scott Call's going after him, but
Market is a center.
yeah, that might be enough to keep him from really struggling. Especially if he keeps getting these good mutinies off.
Yeah, the mutinies are definitely a big deal against Scott Call right now. Minimat should feel free to get very aggressive with the mutinies. This is one of the big reasons I didn't like the Patent Lab selection, and I still don't, is now that off-world market is left open, Minimat's kind of lost some of his automatic mutiny advantage. It's still Goon Squadded, and that's fine. Goon Squads aren't easy to break through this game. You have to sacrifice something good or pick up a weaker tool on the auction if it happens to come up. But if that Goon Squad gets torn through, then suddenly he can be mutinied for 2 minutes. Now everybody's choosing to go after his 1 minute buildings, which is probably a poor decision from Cheesecake NL. But it is an option for them to go ahead and try and get through this Goon Squad and get those full 2 minute mutinies
I guess there's
off
also
the
just
off-world that's separated.
no good option to get through that Goon Squad. You'd be dropping a 30k power surge on that, and that would just feel awful.
It's true. It's true. I mean, that said, a couple minutes ago, a 20, 30k power surge wouldn't have been all that bad, just because most of your stuff wasn't really making any money. Now prices have kind of shot back up a little bit. People got out of some of their reactors in particular. That's brought fuel up. Oxygen's going up from the off-worlds. Silicon's staying stupidly powerful, which it really has no right to, but Scott Call got into a significant amount of glass production.
Empire's sitting on 400 silicon, just dropping in value continuously as silicon starts falling rapidly from Minimat's production.
That would explain it if Minimat spotted that first, but Minimat still has a major problem on his hands of half his stock already being purchased, and Scott Call still sitting on a lot of cash. I mean, it looks like hopping into that glass has paid off for him reasonably well. And on top of that, one big thing in Scott Call's favor is he can actually make money from fuel because he's only got 1 building shipping at all. He's got 1.
While Minimat is consuming $300 to $400 of fuel per second.
Exactly, and that's really just handing the game over to Scott Call. I mean, he's killing himself by shipping all of these resources is the really sad part right now. Which, I don't know what else you do once you've taken these tiles. I mean, the tiles are just dead if you turn them off, but it's not a pleasant situation to be in, just allowing your opponent that advantage.
Maybe one thing you could have done with those sort of tiles is to move them into power, but in this case Minimat moved into those 2 geotherms early, so that wasn't even an option. Just
Exactly. And it's a good point to bring up. That's always the nice thing to do with something like, maybe you went 2 aluminum early because aluminum was spiking pretty hard, somebody was trying to avoid it, it gets up to 70, right? You grab 2 tiles, and you think, late game I can turn these into power. But you are right that when you go into geotherms, it's just not a reasonable transition because you've already got so much power production online. And that price has been pretty steadily low most of this game since the opener. I gotta say, Cheesecake is sitting on a kind of silly amount of cash at this point.
yeah, just letting vampires continue to push into that stock without really responding in any way.
Yeah, problematic. Because even if you start getting aggressive right now, you're just set at such a huge disadvantage. I mean, Cheesecake only has the one off-world. It's not even finished yet. Definitely an issue. And yeah, you can start buying now, but Vampyrus' price is much, much higher because Vampyrus has managed to pick up so much extra stock. Well, we're 2-2 again. This is the first time I think we've actually had this today. No, we had it in our first game. It just ended up in a really weird situation where the people who started finished second. In any case, Scott Call picks up Minimat. Not surprised. Debt really playing a huge factor there, I would say. And that means Scott Call is going to be in a really strong position from here. I mean, Minimat as a subsidiary, not going to be making as much money as you would hope, because he's going to be auto-paying down his debt every second. An important thing to note when you have a subsidiary.
But with fuel so low now and 2 of those silicon tiles moved into panels, that's probably not going to be as much of an issue as it would have seemed.
It's true. And hopefully for them, fuel just kind of sticks that low. It looks like Scott Call was probably keeping that price intentionally high for a while, as we just had a dip in that price, a serious, like the price just collapsed as Scott Call made the purchase,
And he's
which would have
still,
definitely been a good play.
he still has that several hundred on hand, so
It's true. But, it's kind of, I mean, even if you still have several hundred after making the play is still decent just for giving your opponent a bunch of extra debt. Saves you money in the long run because they're so much cheaper to buy.
definitely.
Good to see chems out of our computer at this point. Chems are kind of okay. I mean, Carbon's being shot up rapidly all of a sudden by one of our players.
Carbon scrubbing will keep that very nice.
Yeah. Who even just did that to Carbon? Did Vampires make it? Oh, no, okay.
Cheesecake.
Cheesecake, yeah. Wind turbines everywhere.
With power at 60 something, I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work out quite as well as Cheesecake would hope, especially because those panels were pretty expensive to put up with Carbon now at $200 a piece. That said, you're really just struggling to find anywhere to make money at this point. I mean, reactors are decent, farms are decent. Usually, a lot of newer players in particular avoid making that life support as a robot because you feel like you're helping out your opponent, but I'm kind of tired of staring at Vampires having $1,400, $100 silicon.
2,000 water.
You gotta watch out for those. And yeah, the 2,000 water in particular, that's kind of why you get after people for going for those multiple primary resources as a scavenger, because eventually you just end up in this situation. Oh, but that hurt to watch. Oh.
One other thing
that
to say about what Cheesecake is doing this game, he picked up Superconductor at some point. Not sure if that was an auction or what, but his power is never really connected to his base. First he had this triangle of solar panels, and then he had this line of wind. Just not
It was an
taking
auction
advantage
for
of that.
8,000 debt. I think I can let that go. I went ahead and checked. I mean, 8,000 debt auction for superconductor,
Don't
you know.
take kindly to sabotage.
But
That
yeah,
is
it would have been
fair.
nice for him to connect things up.
There
Since he
will
did
be a
pick up
reckoning for this
superconductor.
behavior.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, even without superconductor, having those wind turbines connected, they wouldn't be
Successful
significantly
offload
weaker,
shipment.
and
Make
just be
room for the
able to do a
profits.
lot more with those tiles.
Absolutely. Scott Call with the strong pickup of Minimat. One really big thing to point out here is Scott Call, first of all, is expansive, so had an easier time getting into Offworlds, and had a lot of tiles when he finally got to HQ level 5. And he picked up an expansive subsidiary. So once again, similar situation, right? Lots of tiles, lots of money, lots of Offworlds over in Scott Call's territory. Meanwhile, Vampirus was a scavenger, had those questionable claims that we talked about earlier with the extra silicon, the extra water, so suffering in tiles, not a huge amount of production, and then picks up a robotic subsidiary and picks it up late. So suddenly we end up in the situation where Scott Call is just plain has more stuff than Vampirus, and the black market really isn't strong enough to make up for that this game. It's one of those downsides of going scavenger. You can get off to a quick start, but you have to find a way to carry that through to the late game, or to end the game fast enough that you don't really run out of steam, and that's not what we're seeing here this game.
I guess we didn't pay too much attention to Scott Carl early in the game, but in particular, he has some interesting claims. Just only this one high iron. He had the aluminum next to his base. These are things that kind of helped him a lot early, and because he never really had to commit so much. Maybe Minimat selling down a little too much iron or cheesecake. Things that let Scott Call get away with devoting fewer claims to these resources that might have been difficult. Because this spot has nice water and aluminum, but very little else, but he was allowed to get away with it because of this massive overproduction of silicon, of iron.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw Scott Call making a fair amount of money on glass at some point this game, and the only reason that was allowed is because all the rest of our players collected so much silicon for him and kind of forced themselves to sell it down and knock that price low by not having access to other things. I'm just trying to check. Let's see. I wanted to go over to production and sales. Scott Call. Yeah, Scott Call sold $164,000 of glass. And he's bought 90,000 in silicon this game. Oh, there's the victory. No big surprise there. Expansive subsidiary. Gets it done. And you are right, we didn't look at Scott Call too much during that game because this kind of fight between Vampirus and Minimat was more of a focus, but Scott Call, he just kind of sat in the corner, played it out strong, and got to the finish quite readily. I really like his decision to not pick up very many tiles separated from his base. I honestly think that made a really big difference this game because it let him make so much more money on fuel in particular. He only bought $4,000 of fuel this game.
Right, just forgoing some access to these basic resources, but having to rely on your opponents to maybe help supply you with them. Sometimes they'll pay up very nicely like this.
And sometimes it really won't, to be fair, but, you know, his opponents really put themselves in a position almost where they were forced to help him out there because they just didn't have access to other things. I mean, when your opponent on HQ1 drops double high iron and one steel mill, maybe it's a bit more okay to assume they're probably going to sell down a lot of iron this game, you know, things like that.
To Minimat's credit, at some point he accumulated 500 iron and swapped out of his iron around HQ3, so he wasn't doing too much to donate to that cause, but still, good job of recognizing that could get away with just a little bit less.
Oh, it's a good victory over to Scott Call. Played it without taking significant risks beyond having to rely on other people for resources a little bit. I imagine that if iron had been too difficult for him, he could have simply got into this additional high iron tile without too much trouble that's near his other one. That's 4 iron a second. That's fine. But he was able to play it out in a fashion where that wasn't necessary. He got his power established. He just kind of sat on it. And this kind of lower risk game for him in general. Because if you think about it, this whole, all right, I might have to take an additional iron tile, is a lot less risky than, all right, I have to get teleportation or I lose the game. You know?
Right. And there were even tools to help him out with that. Even if these other high iron tiles weren't available, there were core samples. There are a lot of ways to get around the problem as long as you notice it in time.
Yeah, we definitely, I gotta say, we definitely did not see enough core sampling this game. That's a big thing that even the best players don't always use well enough, but would have made a really big difference this game, because Minimat did not have to ship these resources this far at all. Could have core sampled out water, could have core sampled out silicon much, much closer. And it's kind of the same thing for Cheesecake. Could have core sampled out water, could have core sampled out probably some aluminum closer. As when you core sample something that's adjacent to another resource, there's automatically, I believe, a 90% chance of finding that same resource. Just something to consider. I like this from OGs at Spees. Ignored in the corner is a decent position to be in if played right. It's true. I won one game before by, in particular, it was like, I think it was a 6 or 8 person game, right? Then I just found it on the other side of a crater in an absolutely awful position. Eventually dropped 2 hologrammed off-worlds and literally nobody ever spotted them because I was just too far away from everything else that they never looked at me, and then you win.
Yeah,
So, hey,
my stream chat, I'm apparently being told that I didn't even look at Scott Cole until Soul 6, so...
That's fair. Hey, that's why we're going to have replays for you guys later, so you can catch up on all the things that we didn't pay attention to because we're by no means perfect.